ready. We're prepared. Do not give in to fear. We are fearless. This is not the time to be afraid. This is a time to stand up and fight back and to resist any temptation for them to divide us. We're in this together. The rule of law is on our side. We will not give in, not give up. We will not capitulate. We will not bow. We will not bend. We will survive.
The federal government released more than 240,000 pages of records that have been under court-imposed seal since 1977, when the FBI first gathered the records and turned them over to the National Archives and Records Administration. So we talked about that. We also talked about the King family saying this is horrible. We never wanted this out. And then we also heard from a bunch of people who, I don't know if anyone's read all 240,000 pages, but from what I'm hearing, there's nothing new. Someone did a video on TikTok or Instagram, one of these places, and they were saying that among the 240,000 pages was this vehement excoriation of this country by Martin Luther King Jr. and a demand for reparations. I think he was looking to put a number, I think at $2.1 trillion. At least that's what it said in this video, and maybe that's in today's dollars, as repair for the harm done to Black people. Now, I don't know the number, but I do know that King did write about this. So I decided to download the book, Why We Can't Wait is the title. Why We Can't Wait. 1964, Dr. Martin Luther King wrote a book where he laid out the case for reparations alongside a concrete expression of justice that, of course, is needed to happen now, not tomorrow, now, and remedying the inherited inequalities that would ultimately only happen through reparations is what he was saying. It would only happen through repair. It would only happen through some monetary attention paid and things being made right and programs being put into place. He said it was urgent. It was an urgency. And that's not surprising, you know? And this is what King, so the guy in the video was like, well, that's probably why he was really assassinated. That and his fight against the Vietnam War, or his speaking out, the audacity to say, why are we over there spending billions of dollars and putting our lives at risk for a concept of what communism we're trying to say? This is a lie, putting people to death for no reason. That and poor people. He was gathering poor people together, Black and white, poor people, similar to the Rainbow Push movement of the Black Panther Party under the leadership of Fred Hampton. Rainbow Push, bringing together Latinos and Blacks and poor whites in a coalition. We know he was shot in his bed next to his pregnant partner while he was asleep at 21 years old. Because there's nothing more fearsome, there's nothing more of a threat to the power structure that we live in than people coming together under a common banner, under a common cause against oppression. And the thing that they depend on is our division. So even around this notion of reparations, there is a sprinkling and a smattering and a very loud contingent of people who are using this as a wedge item among Black people from all over. And I don't know anyone who is fighting for reparations, but like earnestly really believing in reparations, who is thinking that there won't be some lineage proof or whatever, even with the indigenous people, many of whom have not gotten reparations because they did not believe that the indigenous people were mature enough to handle the money. So that, even if people, they got their reparations. No, they did not. So we need to know more before we open our mouths. And as it relates to the King documents, he wrote about reparations. He wrote in 1964, Why We Can't Wait. He said, no amount of gold could provide an adequate compensation for the exploitation and humiliation of the Negro down through the centuries. Not all the wealth in this affluent society could pay the bill. Yet a price can be placed on unpaid wages. The payment should be in the form of a massive program. He wrote this, a massive program of special compensatory measures that could be regarded as a settlement in accordance with the accepted practice of common law. So he's even like, we can follow the law here. We can count up the hours spent of unpaid free labor, redundant, and let's put a price tag on it. Now, then we can say, okay, well, who gets it? Who gets the money? No, programs, which will benefit all, because here's the reality. Those of us who are descendants of folk who were in the fields, and I came in today. I'm watching episode 1 of Washington Black on Hulu. Sterling K. Brown's, I think he produced this. He's also starring in it, and it takes us into Nova Scotia by way of Barbados, into a story of enslavement, but a story of imagination and a story of empowerment. We know that Nova Scotia was one of the last stops on the Underground Railroad. A lot of people ran from bondage into freedom there, built a community. We talked briefly about that yesterday. I sprinkled out some, ice hockey, other things. Thriving community, by the way, in the wake of enslavement and bondage in other places, because people were dropped off in different places. Now we can have that argument, but we're fighting over money that's not here. And I also believe that that's not the real fight. King was clear. King was clear about what needed to happen, as was Randall Robinson, as was Ta-Nehisi Coates. I'm just thinking about the books and articles that have made an undisputed case. I don't think undisputed is the right word. Irrefutable case for reparations. I think it's I don't know anyone that would argue that they're not owed. But how do we get them? Again, and I'm very sober around this. It will require a Congress, that's a House of Representatives, that will put, and they don't have to come up with something new. John Conyers did this 30 years ago, so they could just dust off his bill and put it through and pass it. This current Congress will not. H.R. 40, I said 30 years ago, it was 36 years ago, January of 1989. John Conyers introduced the bill H.R. 40, Commission to Study Reparations. So they haven't even gotten that passed. There have been several cities that have studied, several cities. New York is also, Laurie Daniel Favors is on that commission to study. And what should come out of it is a recommendation. And John Conyers in 1989, he said, he chose the number of the bill 40 as a symbol of 40 acres and a mule, that the United States initially promised freed slaves. This unfulfilled promise and the serious devastation that slavery had on African American lives has never been officially recognized by the United States government. He said, my bill, John Conyers, my bill does 4 things. 1989, it acknowledges the fundamental injustice and inhumanity of slavery. It establishes a commission to study slavery, its subsequent racial and economic discrimination against freed slaves. Number 2. Number 3, it studies the impact of those forces on today's living African Americans. And number 4, the commission would then make recommendations to Congress on appropriate remedies to redress the harm inflicted on living African Americans. We haven't even gotten this passed. So then it begs the question, how are you voting? Where's your lobby? On this? I believe, a couple of folk who are heading up the movement towards, foundationally Black people or whatever are lawyers. So they clearly know that it requires an act of Congress. Congress has to pass a bill that then goes to the Senate to vote on it. We just saw this with the big, ugly mother effing bill that just came through that's going to destroy a lot of people, including your teeth. I'm going to talk about your teeth today as well. But I know that that's the way this current iteration of our government works, right? Reparations is just not going to come out the sky and like Skittles going to rain down on Black. It's not going to happen unless there's a strong push to make it happen. So again, those of you who believe as I do that reparations are owed, I would ask those of you who are in movements that are, claiming to want reparations, where's their lobbying arm, and what are they doing to ensure that there are Congress people who are going to, like, that should be a question. If somebody wants your vote, where do you stand on? You could just say, where do you stand on HR 40? Will you sign up, to sign on to what John Conyers started in 1989? Can we continue this and push it through? What are you going to do? And if you look at the map and there's seats that are up for grabs in Congress, which we need anyway, the midterm is going to be important anyway, but wouldn't it be nice to have a midterm election that you show up in numbers, that we show up in numbers that we haven't seen before, to elect people that are actually going to follow through on this? And then a Senate that will say yes. So not only do we get impeachment, but we also get a conviction. Not only do we get an HR 40, but that gets passed, and then maybe perhaps we'll have, and then we have to wait on a president that will sign it into law, because we don't have that yet. So first things first, there's an order to things, and things don't just happen because you want them to. Things don't just happen because they're right. I would like the world to be in such a state that right and goodness would just happen because it's right and good. But you often have to make right. You often have to create right. You often have to fight for right. Doesn't just happen. And King literally put his life on the line, he lost his life, as did Fred Hampton, as did a number of other people who dared to say, we're going to fight for what's right. There was an essay written about King, as people are talking about these 240,000 pages that nobody's going to read, because y'all couldn't even read. Anyway, people couldn't even read the Project 2025, which would directly impact your life right now. So I don't expect people to pour over 240,000 pages of records that were sealed so that, King's legacy wouldn't be destroyed by people who want to destroy his legacy so they can, uphold a sense of self that they'll never have anyway. It's false. You aren't who you think you are. But in 2023, a guy named Esau McCaulley wrote an essay in the New York Times called "The Kind of Revolution That Martin Luther King Jr. Envisioned." The kind of revolution that Martin Luther King Jr. envisioned. And why we can't wait, he writes about a Black revolution. Like, he writes about the fourth revolution. I said, man, this guy was so much more radical. They really want us to, we shall overcome. They want that king and hold the little black girl, little white boy, I have a drink. They want that king to be the king we remember and uphold. They don't want the king calling for revolution and reparations. They don't like that king, or the king that told Harry Belafonte, I fear I've integrated my people into a burning house. They don't like that king. That king is scary. Oh, that king lost his life. That king got shot from way across the way because he had the audacity to push for real change, not fake change. So Esau McCaulley writes, in 1968, 4 days before he was shot on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his last Sunday sermon at the Washington National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. It was entitled "Remaining Awake Through a Great Revolution." And although King doesn't say the word woke, he uses the concept as it was understood by many Black folks then, well before the term was co-opted by the political right to refer to any left-leaning policy that it wanted to condemn. Esau McCaulley continues, King opened his sermon by recalling the well-known story of Rip Van Winkle, the character in the Washington Irving tale of the same name, who slept for 20 years. King notes that when Rip went to sleep, King George III reigned, and when he awoke, George Washington had become president. Rip Van Winkle had slept through the revolution. King believed that too many Americans, especially those in its churches, were also snoozing through a time ripe for transformation. They needed to wake up to the injustices all around them and make demands for change. Editorial is really well done. which is why I'm sharing a portion of it. Y'all can search. And matter of fact, I know Zan's going to find it and put it in the chat in Nubia. And I thank you, Zan. Hello to you. But I was thinking about this because Washington Irving is also the novelist who gave us Christopher Columbus in 4 versions. Washington Irving was a novelist, but there's a fiction writer who was so good at writing that he was able to immortalize a lost, drunken enslaver in 4 fictional biographies written in 1828, A History of the Life and Voyages of Christopher Columbus. These were fictional books, not rooted in fact. And yet, when I was in high school, I had to study the fiction of Christopher Columbus sailing the ocean blue and regurgitate that back to a teacher to get an A. It's a lie. It's a lie written and crafted by a very good writer who also gave us Rip Van Winkle. It's powerful. It's powerful when you think about the narratives and the lies, which is why we have to be vigilant in telling the truth. You know, even a little bit of wrong, like let's correct all of it. Our future generations deserve and they demand of us better. And we should shut down the lies. So whatever's going to come out about King, and I'm sure this media, which is so compromised and corrupt at its core, so wayward in its vision for what it's supposed to be, which is the one thing standing in the way of tyranny. It's not. It's run over by it. It has actually been blackmailed into being complicit. This media, we cannot expect the truth from this media. And our writers, as I'm reading Martin Luther King Jr.'s book, this one, Why We Can't Wait, his storytelling ability, y'all, that man could write. Okay, if you have not enjoyed or picked up anything written by Martin Luther King Jr., as much of a dynamic speaker, even better writer. I know I'm saying I'm going out on a limb on that one, but I said, oh my goodness, this man could spin a yard, which is why we need more writers. I was talking with Jessica Dukes today for a podcast that I'm working on the Gilded Age. And, you know, she was talking about her art being her radical, response to these times, that she's going to pick roles and act those roles in opposition to the times that we're in, to stand in the gap using her art. And I've been saying this since I've been on these airwaves. Everybody listening to my voice, you have a role to play. Every one of you have a role to play. No, none of us are probably going to be Martin Luther King. Okay. But you have a role to play in the liberation, and you cannot stand on the sidelines. You cannot sit on the sidelines. You cannot sit this one out. You cannot be Rip Van Winkle and waking up 20 years later. Now, this is a time to stay woke. Stay woke and stay ready. Okay, 866-801-8255. So I just wanted to drop a little of that.
We're ready. We're prepared. Do not give in to fear. We are fearless. This is not the time to be afraid. This is a time to stand up and fight back and to resist any temptation for them to divide us. We're in this together. The rule of law is on our side. We will not give in, not give up. We will not capitulate. We will not bow. We will not bend. We will